Matthew 26:14-16. The betrayal that advanced the purpose of God. Matthew writes, open quote, "Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went unto the chief priests, and said unto them, What will ye give me? And I will deliver him unto you. And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. And from that time he sought opportunity to betray him." Matthew 26:14-16. Close quote. This brief scene unfolds quietly, yet it stands as one of the decisive turning points in the gospel narrative. The betrayal of Jesus by one of his own disciples is not merely an act of personal treachery. It is a moment situated within the unfolding covenantal transition that was reaching its climax in that generation. The setting of the betrayal. Immediately before this passage, Jesus had announced that the Passover was approaching and that the Son of Man would be delivered up to be crucified. Matthew 26, verse 2. At the same time, the religious leaders were plotting how they might take him by subtlety and kill him. Matthew 26, 3-5. The leadership of the Old Covenant order had already determined that Jesus must die. Yet their plans were cautious. They feared the people and sought to avoid an uproar during the feast. Into this situation steps Judas Iscariot. Matthew introduces him simply as one of the 12. The emphasis is striking. The betrayal does not come from an outsider, but from within the circle of those who walked with Jesus. One who had seen his works, heard his teaching, and shared in his ministry, now approaches the chief priests with an offer. What will ye give me? And I will deliver him unto you. The leaders who had been searching for a way to seize Jesus without public disturbance now find the very opportunity they needed. 30 pieces of silver. Matthew records the agreed price, 30 pieces of silver. This amount is not incidental. It echoes the language of prophecy, particularly the imagery found in Zechariah 11, verse 12-13, where the shepherd of Israel is valued at 30 pieces of silver, and the money is ultimately cast into the house of the Lord. In the prophetic narrative, the rejected shepherd symbolizes the rejection of God's appointed leader by the people. Thus, the price placed upon Jesus reflects the tragic assessment of Israel's leadership toward their Messiah. The shepherd of Israel is valued at the price of a slave. Yet even this valuation unfolds within the framework of divine purpose. The prophets had already spoken of the rejection of the righteous one, the suffering servant, and the shepherd who would be struck so that the sheep would be scattered. The betrayal, therefore, is not a disruption of God's plan, but part of the path through which redemption would be accomplished. The role of Judas in the divine drama. Matthew tells us that from that moment forward, Judas sought opportunity to betray him. The word opportunity suggests a careful search for the right moment, one where Jesus could be delivered quietly into the hands of the authorities. Judas becomes the instrument through which the leader's plot becomes possible. Yet throughout the gospel narrative, the arrest and crucifixion of Jesus are repeatedly portrayed as events moving according to a predetermined purpose. Jesus had already declared that the Son of Man would be delivered up, suffer, and be killed. The betrayal is therefore one of the steps leading toward that appointed hour. In this sense, the actions of Judas intersect with the larger movement of redemptive history. The Messiah would be handed over, rejected by the leaders of the nation, and put to death in Jerusalem. Through that death, the Old Covenant order, centered in the temple and the sacrificial system, was approaching its decisive end. The betrayal and the coming covenant fulfillment. The Gospel of Matthew consistently presents Jesus as the fulfillment of Israel's story. From the opening genealogy to the closing scenes of the Passion, the narrative moves toward the climactic moment where the Messiah gives his life. The betrayal initiates the chain of events leading to the cross. What appears as treachery becomes the doorway through which the redemptive work of Christ is accomplished. The sacrificial system of the temple had long pointed forward to a greater offering. The Passover lamb, the daily sacrifices, and the priestly ministry all foreshadowed the coming reality. In the days of Jesus, that reality was now standing in their midst. The betrayal leads to the arrest. The arrest leads to the trial. The trial leads to the crucifixion. Through that crucifixion, the once-for-all sacrifice would be offered. The completion of the work. Within the unfolding narrative of Scripture, The death of Christ was not an isolated tragedy, but the completion of the work necessary to bring the covenant age of the law to its fulfillment. The cross secured the redemption that the sacrificial system could only anticipate. The Messiah bore the sin of his people, bringing about a redemption that would not need repetition. His offering was not like the continual sacrifices of the temple. It was decisive and complete. The betrayal by Judas, therefore, becomes one of the final steps leading to the climactic act through which the old order would pass away and the new covenant reality would stand established. The quiet beginning of the final events. Matthew 26:14-16 is brief, yet it quietly initiates the final movement of the gospel story. A disciple approaches the priests. A price is agreed upon. A search begins for the right moment. From this point forward, the events move rapidly toward the cross. The shepherd will be struck. The Messiah will be delivered. And through that death, the redemptive purpose long foretold in the scriptures will reach its fulfillment.